Good morning. Wow, you're all awake. Good. This is part of the time you get up here and you start realizing, like, okay, it's 9 o'clock. Some of those people have been up since 6, so they're wide awake. And, like, I had 4 cups of coffee. I'm ready to go. And then at 11, it's kind of like some of you just rolled out of bed like 20 minutes ago. Let's be honest. As Dave said, I'm a communications professor at Moody, but I used to be a pastor here. And so I know as a communications person that the first thing that I say is the thing that you're probably going to remember, at least one of them. So here's what I'd like you to do. If you take out your mobile devices this morning, I used to be a pastor on staff at a church, and so I know to some degree how hard the pastoral staff here at Alpine worked this past weekend to do that many services for that many people. So here's what I'd like you to do. I would like you to put a reminder in your phone to thank them next weekend, because some of them aren't here this morning. And here's why. Because I think it's crucial as we move into this new year to start with an attitude of gratitude. We start by being grateful. Gratefulness has the capacity to reshape the way that we think. Because gratitude is like a parent, a mature, wise person who looks down at our childish pride and says, "You think this whole thing's about you? You couldn't be more wrong. Look at all of the people around you and all of the people that you need to thank just for being here today. All of the people that care about you and love you." So write them a little note, a reminder, something, whatever you want to do for them next weekend. But put it in your phone. And while you're holding that device in your hand, this morning, I want to spend some time connecting that device that you're holding in your hand to Christmas, to the incarnation of Jesus. And you're saying, what does that have to do with this? Well, I have to tell you a story to get you there. And every story starts, well, at its beginning. So let's start at the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, everything. He made it all. He made it perfect, exactly as he meant it to be. He didn't leave anything out. And he built this beautiful garden, and he created humans, 2 of them. He breathed life into them. And everything was exactly as he intended. And they got to play in this garden like some kind of giant live version of Minecraft that every kid dreams of. He got to play in this garden, and in that garden, they actually got to walk and interact with God himself. That's a mind-blowing concept. You are interacting with the God of the universe who made everything. And he walked with them, and he had conversations with them. They got to ask him questions. They got to find out his heart and experience his presence. And then they chose to sin. And in that moment when they chose to sin, everything changed. Everything changed from a guilt perspective, but everything changed, especially for someone like me, from a communications perspective. Communication changed entirely. And if you look with me this morning at Genesis chapter 3, starting in verse 8, in this passage, Adam and Eve have already made the choice to sin. They've already recognized they're sinners, and they've already found fig leaves to put on. And in that moment, it says, in verse 8, if you can show that, it says that the Lord came and was walking, and they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord among the trees in the garden. And the Lord God was calling to the man and said to him, "Where are you?" And he said, "I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself." In this moment in human history, communication changes forever. They ran away from his face, from his presence. They didn't want to see him. And they expected him to show up, obviously. I mean, it says, "We heard you walking in the cool. We know you're going to do this. This is what you regularly do with us. We know you're going to be there. So we first got fig leaves and then went and hid in some trees." Which Which makes me wonder, were they trying to camouflage or what was going on there? It also says that when they knew that they had sinned, they knew they were naked, they hid. They ran away. This is the first instance in human history of a fight or flight mechanism. They knew they couldn't fight him, so we're running away and hiding. And we'd like to think that Adam and Eve were unique. Oh, this is a different kind of thing. But the truth is, we all do this. When I was a little kid, I grew up in Peoria, which is where I first met Dave when he was little. My parents were some of his teachers. So if you'd like me to tell stories about him, I can, just not right now. We'll wait till he gets back and I can do it to his face. But when I was little, I grew up in Peoria in a suburban type town, and it basically had the alley in the back instead of the driveway in the front. And some of you know what I'm talking about. And my brother, my younger brother, and I, as we were accustomed, started throwing rocks at each other. Because what do brothers do? I mean, and I don't know who started it. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying it happened. And as will happen in any confrontation with a brother, it continues to escalate, because at first you're just tossing one back and forth, and then it starts getting harder and harder and harder. And then he hit me, and now I'm mad. I picked up a rock, and he was getting further and further away because he knew he was in trouble. Because I played baseball. And I hauled off, and I threw that rock. In that moment, time freezes, which I think is what happened for Adam and Eve. Because I threw the rock and had multiple sets of realizations in that frozen moment, like, oh no, what happens if I do hit him? Oh no, he's standing in front of my dad's car. And he, of course, just went, yoink. And I busted out the front light, the headlight. And I went, oh no, I'm going to die. And so like Adam and Eve, what did I do? I ran. I ran down the alley, and I ran around the corner, and I hid in the neighbor's garage. And I thought, I can never go home again. They'll kill me. And then I started thinking, like, okay, I could live off the berries in the alley, and there's a spigot over there. I could probably stay here for a while in this garage. No one's going to know, because I'm little. Who cares? And then it started dawning on me as I hear the voice of my dad yelling my name. And I thought, oh, no. And I looked at the berries and thought, they're probably poisonous, and I'll just die in somebody's garage, and that's weird. And actually, I don't know how to do all this to take care of myself because I'm like 6 or 7, so I should probably just go home and die. And I didn't die. But I realized in that moment that even from a little child like Adam and Eve, I knew when I did something wrong, you run away and you hide. You hide your face. You get away from people. And as we look, we realize that this interaction showed that the communication relationship between God and Adam and Eve had completely changed. Because when we jump to verse 23, in verse 23, Genesis 3:23, it says that God banished him from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he had been taken, and he drove the man out. And he placed on the east side of the Garden of Eden cherubim, an angel, and flaming sword, so that he could not, to guard the way to the tree of life, so he could not come back. Now we have a problem. There is a communication gap between God and Adam and Eve. Now, in communication terms, this is the beginning of what we would call mediation. So there's only really 2 types of communication, just so you understand. The first one is to be present. This is me. I'm here. Hello. You can see my face. You can tell that I'm wearing a black coat. Great. I'm present with you. The second form of communication, which happens at that moment, is a new form of communication called re-present or represent, in which I am no longer present with you. And my friends who are doing videos say they can put me up on a screen. I'm no longer present with you. I am representing myself some other way. And this requires a medium, a thing. A medium just means a thing that's between the two of us. That can be all kinds of different things that's between the two of us. At the beginning, you can see me up there. Can you see me on video up here? Because I look the same. I mean, I think I do. But like if I go like this, and people out there like watching it. If you're watching this on Facebook, you're seeing me on the video, and then you're seeing me on a video behind me, so it's like the Matrix, like 3 layers back. But you're seeing me behind me, and you realize the screen is between you and me when it doesn't need to be. But here's the funny part. Most of you are still looking at the screen. You're all looking at the screen even though I'm standing right here. But here's the thing. The screen is a medium. It comes between the two of us, and it creates consequences. For instance, watch this. Can you see this on the screen? Just a little bit? Yeah, because when I shake my head on Skype and say, yeah, I agree with you, I have to go like this for you to see that I'm actually shaking my head yes. It creates consequences. It changes my behaviors. There's a gap between the two of us now. And this medium just literally means the thing in between us, the middle ground, the thing that stands between us. Human history has lots of them. At the beginning, it was probably kings and emperors sending a representative, a representer, to somebody else to say, this is what my king says. I'm a representative for them. What I say is what he says. We hope. And then they start writing letters. Okay, well, now he put it down on paper and in scrolls and papyrus and all the... Okay, now I can read it, hopefully. Because all of you can read cursive still, right? Oh, wait, half of you can't even read the Declaration of Independence at this point. So, then we start doing more and more complicated things. We start coming up with Morse code, and we use telegraphs, and then we get telephones, and we can hear each other's voices, and it starts tricking us into thinking that we're actually present with one another when we're not. And then we get Skype and video chat and text messaging where we think we say a lot, and then we're not really sure we did. And we say it faster, but we say less in both ways. We are no longer present. We are mediated. We are representing ourselves some other way. Now, God uses this. So please don't misunderstand me this morning and hear me saying that I think media is terrible. I teach media. I kind of am into it. But it's always second best. God uses media to represent himself. He uses all kinds of different communication formats to get to us. He uses dreams, but we still have to figure out, hey, was that really what he was saying, or was it just something we saw last night at the pyramid? Because mediated communication almost always creates misunderstandings. So, when he sends dreams, they have to be interpreted and be clear. When he sends visions, we're like, whoa, I got to get my medication checked. Was that real, or was that, I don't know what just happened. My favorite one's the burning bush, because I think that Moses saw it and went, what is going on? Now, most of you have heard this story and you think it's fairly normal, but I'd consider the fact that I'd like you this afternoon to walk out of your house and look at a bush and imagine it's on fire and talking to you. And you'd be, wait, what? No, that can't happen. And it tells you to go do something you don't want to do. How many of you listen to the bush? You want what? I am not going to Egypt right now. Are you kidding me? God uses these mediated moments, and he creates moments, like he creates ways to get to us because he still wants to communicate. He still wants to talk to us. He still wants to be with us. So he mediates these forms. And one of the things that he does when he sends Moses with the law, and in the law he sets up a tabernacle. And the tabernacle turns into the temple when Solomon makes it. And the temple, God's presence comes and lives in the temple. But here's the key. There is always a veil, a median between the two of us. And they only get to send one guy in a year. And they tie a rope to his leg, because when he goes in, if he gets it wrong, they have to yank him out. Which is the ultimate like vaudeville, like hook. Like, oh, wait, you're dead. That's kind of high stakes performance is all I'm saying. It's mediated. Only one person gets to go in there one time a year. Everybody didn't just get to walk in. And here's the thing. He happens over and over again. Prophets and kings and people he inspires with dreams and visions and all kinds of amazing ways that he's trying to continue to communicate. And then at the end of what we call the Old Testament, it goes dark for 400 years. 400 years. For people who lived in a radio age, that would be called radio silence. For people that grew up with television, that's called dead air. For students in here who grew up with text, that's called ghosting. God ghosted people for 400 years. That's a long time to disappear. And then he shows up again. But this time, it's like he had this moment, like the fireworks where it's like the pause and then it's all of it at once. It's an angel shows up for Mary, and then there's a prophet named John the Baptist, and there's all this stuff that happens because he's going to show up. This is the way the writer of Hebrews puts it, because this, for me, is a communication text. In Hebrews chapter 1, verse 1, it says that in the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets at many times and in various ways. Best button history. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, who was present, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom also he made the universe. If we read in John 1:14, the famous passage that you heard this weekend when we were listening to the Christmas sermon, it says that the Word became flesh. He showed up and made his dwelling among us. And we have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. The next verse in Hebrews 1, verse 3, is amazing because it's actually about exactly what I was talking about earlier. It says that Jesus is the sun. The sun is the radiance of God's glory. Do you know how you see things? You see them by light. So the light of the world showed up so that you could see it completely differently. And the exact, meaning you've seen him, you've seen the Father, the exact representation, there's no gap anymore. There's no mediated. When Jesus shows up, you got the real thing. Sustaining all things by the power of his word, and after he had provided for the purification of sin, he sat down at the right hand of God. Now, Jesus shows up, and the incarnation, and I want you to hear this line very clearly, the incarnation of Jesus demonstrates the divine priority for personal and relational presence. In other words, Christmas is proof that he just wants to see your face. He showed up so he could wrap his arms around you and smell your breath, like when you woke up Christmas morning and you forgot to brush your teeth because you ran down to get the presents. He just wanted to smell you. He wanted to put his arms around you. He wanted to sing and swim and dance and do all the things that you could only do when you're present. Incarnation is proof. It demonstrates the highest level of priority in communication from God on down is face-to-face communication, not mediated. It's always second best to him. He taught this to his disciples. This becomes a priority for them. So if you think that this is, well, that's Jesus, I'm not sure how much that applies to us. This is what his disciples, they applied it to all of their ministry. So we see Romans 1, Paul is trying to talk to the people in Rome, and he's saying this to them. He's saying, I long to see you, face to face. That's the word there. I long to see your face so that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to make you strong. That is, that you and I may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith. I do not want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, that I planned many times to physically come to you, but have prevented from doing so until now in order that I might have a harvest among you, just as I had a harvest among the Gentiles. Okay? What does that mean? It means Paul kept trying to be face to face with his friends in Rome. That was his goal. Verse 1 of Romans. He doesn't wait till the end. He says at the beginning, Okay, that's Paul. But Paul, that's one. All right, let's go with John, who spent a lot of time with them. 2 John only has one chapter, verse 12. It says this, I have much to write to you, but I do not want to use paper and ink. I do not want to be mediated unless I have to be. Instead, I hope to visit you and talk with you face to face, so that our joy may be complete. Incomplete joy, complete joy. Why? Because it's really hard to throw a party with a letter. It is. I just want to show up so we can hang out and have dinner and talk and just tell each other jokes. Why? Because that's what Jesus did. It means so much to him that he says it's almost exactly the same thing. If you go to 3 John, verse 13, chapter 1, he says this, and I have much to write you, but I do not want to do so with pen and ink. I hope to see you soon, and we will talk face to face. I want to talk with you face to face. This is the divine priority. It's also the expectation of what heaven will look like. In a chapter that we normally read all the time, 1 Corinthians 13, it's all about love, right? But it says, when you get down a little further, for now we see in a mirror dimly a mediated device. By the way, that means you've never actually seen yourself, right? You've always been mediated in looking at yourself until somebody shows you what you look like. For now I know in part, but then I will know fully, even as I am fully known. A complete, immersive presence that allows me to know myself in ways that I will never, ever know myself here. I get that. In Revelation chapter 21, it talks about the new heaven and the new earth coming. And when it talks about that, it talks specifically about this new place, this new heaven, this new earth that Jesus is bringing is actually bringing back his full presence. You get to be with him. Here's what it says. It says, I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, look, God's dwelling place is now among his people, and he will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them. And he will be their God, and he will wipe away every tear from his eye, for there will no more death, no more mourning, no more crying, no more pain. The old order, that is gone, it passed away. Now here's the fascinating part about this. I'm not trying to tell you that you should never use media, because God, at the very last verse, says, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. Why? Because I wasn't there. And I kind of am really grateful, honestly, that they actually wrote all this stuff down. Because if it didn't, I didn't get a chance to meet them, and I don't have a time machine. So if I want to read and hear what they are saying, then I need them to mediate it for me. But all of them said it was second best. It was never what was meant to be from the beginning, and it will not be at the end. And you're all saying, that's great, but I live here. You do. You live there. I understand. We live in a mediated time, in the middle time, in the mean time. So what do we do? Well, first, let me remind you that this moment in the history of the universe is temporary. Okay? Just be clear. That is coming. It will show up. This is temporary. And some of you say, yeah, but it's like 80 years long. Yes, but let's just do a little fractions. I know all of you are out of school, but 80 over infinity is next to nothing. It's really, really, really tiny. Okay? So you live in this space, and I get that. The other thing is you live in an unprecedented time. We live in the 50 years that involve digital technology that basically starts with the personal computer and significantly explodes with the internet and then the advent of mobile technology. You live in the aftermath of an explosion. And in that explosion, things started to speed up. Why? Because technology by its nature, especially digital technology, values efficiency. It wants things done faster. Like most of you don't really like waiting like longer than 5 minutes for coffee at Starbucks. Like, oh my gosh, how long is it going to take? What are they brewing it in Africa? Well, the beans are from Africa, and how they got them here and got you a cup of African coffee is pretty amazing. We think things should be faster. We've gotten used to pressing the Prime button on Amazon and like, really? It took 2 days to get that here? You realize it took like months and months for them just to get like tea from England to Boston Harbor, right? Well, this is pretty cool. It gets faster and faster. But we're approaching a moment for many of us where we're starting to realize that it might actually just be too fast. Kind of like the kid who got on the sled and started going down and was like, this is awesome, wait, this is going too fast, somebody get me off this thing. We're just now starting to understand the tensions, just now, of what this thing can do. But it makes things faster and faster and faster. And here's the thing. Lots of things are really good fast. I like my bank to be fast. I don't want to wait 4 or 5 days for a check to clear, okay? I really like that the maps on my phone tell me exactly real-time traffic, so I know where to avoid. It's great. But relationships aren't efficient. They're not. They don't work that way. In fact, if you try and speed through your time with people, you're generally going, oh, why did it go so fast? Because you probably had a moment like that this week. Like, Christmas is over? Wait, slow down. I just wish things would slow down. Technology is making them appear to be going faster. Trust me, the universe does not spin any faster because you have a mobile device. But it appears that way. I like to say that relationships are a lot like chocolate chip cookies. If you're going to make chocolate chip cookies, you should lay them out and put them on a baking pan and stick them in the oven. No, my wife should do that because I'm terrible at cooking. But she lays them out, she puts them in the oven, and they cook for a little while, and it starts smelling like chocolate chip cookies in the whole house. They come out all nice and warm. Get a little ice cream. You're all smelling it. You're like, why didn't he bring chocolate chip cookies with him? Relationships work like that. They take time. And when you take the time and invest the time, you actually get good results. Unfortunately, many of us are trying to do our relationships like we're putting chocolate chip cookies in the microwave, which is gross. Because it like burns the edges and the middle's bubbling and it's all gooey and it's kind of like, no one wants to eat that. Why would we do that? Because we've gotten so used to everything else in our life being fast that we haven't actually taken the time to ask ourselves, should this be slow? So, what does that mean for this year? It means that if the divine priority is that we spend more time face to face with one another, we need to consider our relationship with our mobile device. We need to consider our relationship with the technology that we use. And if it needs to be faster, banking, maps, great, use it. If it needs to be slower, you might need to put it away and just be present with one another. Because in the moment that we're present with one another, we realize the power of presence. See, I can get on social media and I can talk to 42 people, but here's the thing, I am ultimately alone in my house. And by being alone with technology, what communications people like me have come to realize is that it comes with a set of uncertainties. And it fosters those doubts in us. Did that person really mean that? Do they actually really even care? They press like, but I don't even know because they press like on everything now. Do you even like anything if you like everything? Do you care? We filter everything, so nobody ever actually looks like they look. We look like Nashville or Hefe or Lo-Fi. And all the people with Instagram are laughing, and all the people without are like, what is he talking about? But it also allows us to be fake, to say things we don't mean, that would be really hard to say in person. No, I'm okay. Nah, you hear it? His voice went down. He's not okay. I'm okay on text. Looks the same in either way. I can't tell. How do you plan to put this as a priority this year to say, I am going to make more of an effort to spend more time present with people and less using second best? So, if you agree with me, if this is something you're saying, hey, you know what, I actually am with you on this, I think we should make this a priority, here's what I'd like you to do. Take your mobile device out. You're not going to throw it, don't worry, I don't want to be hit by it, calm down. Just take your mobile device out, and I'd like you to hold it, and I'm going to say a sentence, and if you agree, I'll repeat it in a second, and you can repeat it with me. But here's a sentence that I've been trying to get in my own head. This will always be second best. Now, if you agree with me, I just want you to look at your phone and say this with me. This will always be second best. Now, you're like, I'm talking to my phone, but no one's on there. Right, because what I'm actually trying to do is a memory device. So if you open your phone, just open your mobile device and look on the screen, you'll see that if I asked you to find the picture that represented a phone that would make a phone call, don't make a phone call. You could tell me which one it was. Do you know what these are called? They're called icons. You know what icons are for? They're for memory. I want your whole phone to be an icon to remind you, second best, second best, second best, second best. I want this thing, every time you pick it up and you look at it, it's second best, which makes me go, wait, why am I doing second best all the time? Why am I not doing first best? Why am I not using it to say, hey, when are we going to coffee? How can we hang out next? I'm not saying don't plan it on your phone. Don't do what you want to do. Do it. Great. I'm saying this will always be second best. So look at it and say it again. This will always be second best. Second best. Not best. Second best. How do you plan to, this year, spend more time being present with the people around you? Some of you are saying, that's the problem. You don't understand, I don't have time. Depending on the research that I read, which I'm a communications professor, so I read all kinds of stuff, the average says that you spend 4 to 6 hours a day on that thing. A day. Now, I'll give you, hey, I got to work, I got to do other stuff. Okay, so let's just cut it in half. 2 to 3 hours a day. 2 to 3 hours a day you'd get back if you just wanted to spend some time with some people. You don't have a time problem, you have a priority problem. So, choose differently. So here's what I'd like you to do. If you believe this, take your phone out, open it up, open your calendar app or a reminder app, I don't care which one you'd prefer, and I want you to write down the name of one person who in the next month, you're like, I can't do it right now, it's Christmas, I get it, next month that you want to be present with. Reminder, set a time. You will know it is a priority in your life when it shows up on your calendar. When you actually have a time set aside for it. And when you get to that moment, put your device away. Just stick it in your pocket. Ignore it. And be present. Because the most valuable time, the most valuable thing in the world is not your time. The most valuable thing in your world is your undivided attention. It's the hardest thing in the world to get. Imagine the last time somebody looked at you for 5 minutes and didn't look at anything else. That happens? 5 minutes. Undivided attention. Give it to another person because here's the key. In doing so, you give the gift of your presence. And in giving the gift of your presence, you start to realize that if that's what Jesus did, he gave the gift of his presence so he could be close, so he could hug people, so he could sing and laugh and talk and swim and play sports and awesome. And we are going to follow him as people who believe and put our faith and trust in him. And if you haven't, come see me after. I'd love to talk to you. But as people who follow Jesus, I'd like you to remember that as followers of Jesus, we are called to be present and embody the love of Jesus, both to the people who are here and to the world out there, which means you have to put your device down to even notice they're there. Some of you have a bunch of extra cookies at home, which you shouldn't eat. Put them on a plate and find someone to take them to and introduce yourself. It might even be your next door neighbor. But how do you love your neighbor if you've never met them? Show up face to face, and you will begin to understand what a gift it is to be present with one another. Because these things, as I wrap up, will go away. They will break. They will be replaced. They will be far, far. But the people who are sitting around you are eternal beings who you can spend eternity with and invest in right now and reap the rewards of that forever and ever and ever. Let's pray. Father, we thank you that you sent your son, Jesus, because you loved us, and you were so excited to the opportunity to be face to face with us again. That Christmas was a giant party for you. Jesus, you showed us that for you, being face to face with us was our highest priority. Help us this year as we begin to make new declarations, new resolutions, to put the same priority on the people that you are placing in our path, to be face to face, to be present with as you did, that we may give that gift that you gave to us, that love that you embodied for us, to one another and to the world around us. We pray these things in your name, that in the end we may be like you. Amen.